Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about Kriya Yoga plus devotion. So the idea of Kriya Yoga plus devotion is something that Paramahansa Yogananda had come up with. We hear about it especially in the talks from Brother Anandamoy, who was a self-realization fellowship monk. So he said, quoted Yogananda saying, Kriya Yoga plus devotion works like mathematics, right? To attain the spiritual goal. And the spiritual goal in self-realization fellowship and many different yogic paths is this yoga, this union of the soul with the divine. The idea of Kriya Yoga plus devotion would be the secret that allows one to attain that. Now, Kriya Yoga is, for those of you who don't know, Kriya Yoga is a system of particular kind of breathing called pranayama in yogic terminology, and it refers to the movement of prana, the life force. And Kriya Yoga is very much about getting into an internalized state, what is called pratyahara by Patanjali, who is one of the famous sages, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So pratyahara being that part of your yogic experience where you get this internalization, your senses recede from the outside world and they go inside, and feelings of bliss and so on. And so the idea that devotion would intensify that. Now, what are we talking about when we talk about devotion? Well, Yogananda was very much, devotion was for, different forms of God in the Hindu pantheon, right? And it was not limited just to Brahma, sort of the indivisible, omnipresent God without form, but also to things like Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna, etc. And that being sort of a form of God that one could direct one's devotion towards. We see in the writings about Sri Ramakrishna that devotion can be a very effective path for one's spiritual development. And so he said, Sri Ramakrishna basically said, devotion is the easiest way. And he tried all different types of yoga, tantric yoga, you name it. He had done it, right? But he said that bhakti, devotion, was the most sort of simple and straightforward path for people to do. And so there's something to be said for devotion. Where we diverge at Modern Kriya from sort of the perspective of Yogananda and Self-Realization Fellowship is where the devotion is directed. So often devotion or bhakti is directed outwardly towards the deity, right? So somebody may worship the form of Krishna, right? And so to see all things in the world as Krishna and to be in this constant sort of communion, communicating their love, their devotion to, the various manifestations of Krishna, which is basically interpreted as everything in creation. The thing about devotion as practiced by SRF and Yogananda was devotion was very much an external focus, right? It's turning one's love outwards. Now, I guess ultimately the idea was that by projecting one's love outwards towards the divine, it would also, the realization that the divine is also in oneself would eventually blossom, and then one would feel this internal love inside and an external love towards the divine and realize they were part of the same thing and that one is one with the divine. So that is maybe a way that someone could feel that unification, that yogic communion, if you will. The way that devotion is normally directed is this outward focus. And what that does is it really ignores the self, the person, right? To the point where some people, in different spiritual communities will deny that their body has any relevance other than being like an empty shell for the soul or for the spirit, right? So, and different saints have regarded the body in disdainful ways, one of them being St. Francis of Assisi. He used to call his body brother donkey or brother jackass, meaning it was something that was stupid. It wasn't worthy of his devotion. But Jesus, on the other hand, who was external to him, was worth his devotion. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that the devotion, the love, the key, the secret to Bhakti Yoga, and the secret really to Kriya Yoga is the love inside. It is love of oneself, And one must start with oneself. If you can't love yourself, it's really hard to love other people, because then what you're doing is just projecting your love onto them. And so this projection, this transference has been studied in psychology, and it's not necessarily something that is particularly mentally healthy. You want to have an acceptance of yourself as you are. And that is really the key to Bhakti Yoga, to have this feeling of acceptance, of love, and of allowing yourself to accept who you are in the present moment and to allow your capacity for change. This is about moving forward. It's about inner transformation. It's about recognizing things as they are and allowing things to be, to become more than they currently are. So this is a transformational process. It is very, very healthy. If you don't go through this process, what ends up happening is that the transformation gets stunted. And I believe that is what has happened in many yogic paths, where the devotion is the focus outside oneself. The people who actually get success in those paths are the ones who realize it inside themselves. And at Modern Kriya, we use the inner smile, which comes from Taoist internal alchemy, as the most simple, really easy technique that helps to facilitate this self-acceptance, this self-love, right? And it begins with a smile on your face and just a smiling and accepting things internally as they are currently, right? Accepting your body as it is, all your issues that you have, right? Your imperfections, accepting all of that and loving it fully. And then by realizing that it's okay for things as they are, that one gives the consent for things to change. That's the essence of Bhakti Yoga, the essence of the transformative experience through self-love. It's so essential. But when we talk about Kriya Yoga as having Kriya Yoga plus devotion works like mathematics for this sort of spiritual realization, if there isn't the element of self-love, of self-acceptance, you will not get it working. Kriya Yoga will not work like mathematics for your inner transformation, for your enlightenment, for your spiritual development, because you're missing the most important part, which is self-acceptance. You need that, right? You can't forgive other people until you forgive yourself, right? So this, often people have this sort of this fear and self-loathing kind of experience, and it gets projected on other people, and then the other people are being blamed for, you know, the problems of the self. But really it's transferring that sort of darkness in oneself and projecting it onto somebody else. But it doesn't go away from inside. You need to accept yourself first. You need to accept that you've done things that you didn't want to do, that you don't like the impact of, whatever state that you're in. And when you accept yourself and open yourself up from the inside, open up yourself, open up your inner space and allow the transformation to happen, that's when things start to happen. That's when you get the spiritual evolution, because you're not chasing it outside of yourself anymore. You're not projecting out your devotion to some sort of disembodied deity saying, oh, I love you, and I'll do Kriya Yoga too, and that will solve my problems. No, no, no. If you do Kriya Yoga, but you also practice this self-acceptance, this self-love, especially if you use the inner smile, you will get inner transformation happening. Now, the great thing about Kriya Yoga is one of the most effective and powerful techniques for going internal, right? So it really stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it leads you inside into this pratyahara state, this internalized state, right? But often what people will do in Kriya Yoga is they get that far and they're sitting there basically in the state of such stillness, this pratyahara, this internalized state, and even into states of this dhyana, where you're starting to have sort of meditative experiences, but then they just sit there and nothing happens. There's no transformation happening. Well, why is that? If they start projecting their devotion outside of themselves, it doesn't help. What they need to do is turn it inside. So really, if you're doing Kriya Yoga and you found you've hit that wall and you think that even devotion is not working for you, what you need to do is turn that devotion from the outside focus to bring it inside. Start to become aware and start to accept yourself. And you can do that just with the inner smile. And all that is, you're just putting on the smile. You're smiling inside. feeling inside. This is interoception. You start to feel what you feel. There might be tightness, there might be feelings, strong emotions. You accept it as it is and just allow yourself to resonate in that. What ends up happening is things then start to open up from the inside out, and you love yourself, you accept yourself. You don't have to judge yourself. You don't have to say, oh, I need to do better next time. You just feel it and accept it and be one with it. As you do that, that inner transformation starts to happen. Those internal energies start to open up. And especially if you do other techniques like the ocean breathing, the Ming-Men breathing that we do, and you do other things like the microcosmic orbit, the 6 healing sounds, all those things will start to facilitate the chi, the life force inside, from being stuck in the place that it is in the current state that you can't accept. It will start to open it up and things will start to transform, right? So this is like the magic of internal alchemy, right? And this comes from a Taoist internal alchemy perspective. We bring this inner smile in. So if you're doing Kriya Yoga, if you apply the inner smile to your Kriya Yoga, you are doing this internal devotion. You are doing the Kriya Yoga plus devotion that works like mathematics. But if you project your devotion outwards and you're doing Kriya Yoga, you're probably only going to get limited results unless you have already done the internal transformation of accepting yourself, loving yourself, allowing yourself consent to change, right? So that's the essence of it. The Kriya Yoga plus devotion, the devotion is inside. It is self-love. It is so important. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.